You've probably seen the headlines about those devastating floods in Spain.
Right.
And maybe you caught some of the footage of how tense things got when their leaders went to visit those areas.
Oh.
Well, that's what we're going to deep dive into today.
Okay.
To really try to understand what happened, why the public reacted that way, and what it could tell us about, what's next for Spain.
Interesting.
We're basing this deep dive mostly on this article from People on Español.
Right.
The title is Ataca la Casa Real Española, Tiran Barro y Ladrillos a los Reyes de España.
Wow, that's
Which
bad.
basically translates to
Yeah.
attack on the Spanish royal house. They throw mud and bricks at the king and queen of Spain.
Wow, that gives us a pretty clear picture right off the bat.
Yeah, it really does. It's a really intense firsthand account. But before we really get into it,
Yeah.
a little bit of context. So the Valencia region of Spain was just hit by these torrential rains,
Oh, wow.
causing what they call a dena.
No, I'm not familiar with that term.
It's basically this weather phenomenon where like a pocket of cold air comes down
Okay.
and slams into that warmer Mediterranean air.
So you get these.
Yeah, and it creates these crazy downpours.
Oh, wow.
Flash floods.
Oh, no.
Sadly, over 200 people have died.
Oh, gosh, that's awful.
It's just awful.
So that's the backdrop then.
Yeah, it's really important context.
Okay.
When we're talking about how people reacted when Spain's president, Pedro Sánchez, King Felipe VI,
Okay.
and Queen Letizia all went to visit one of the hardest hit places by Porta.
Okay, and so when did they visit?
Well, that's the thing. It took 5 days after the disaster for them to get there.
5 days.
Yeah.
I can imagine that delay did not help.
Oh, not at all. I mean, just
Right.
think about the unimaginable loss and devastation people were dealing with.
I mean, yeah, to be dealing with that and then to feel like, those who were supposed to be leading and helping
Exactly.
are nowhere to be found.
And the article really captures all that raw emotion.
Yeah.
People were shouting insults.
At the leaders,
Oh, yeah.
yelling, asesinos,
Asesinos.
which is murderers in Spanish,
Wow.
even throwing mud and other things.
It sounds just chaotic.
It was a really intense scene,
Yeah.
but I can't help but wonder if there's more to it, right?
Oh, definitely.
Like, if this anger was about something bigger,
Uh-huh.
what do you think fueled this level of intensity?
Well, you have to think about it, right? It's not just the delayed response.
Right.
It's that immediate,
Right.
raw grief.
Yeah.
The trauma of losing loved ones.
Homes,
Yeah.
your livelihood.
Exactly.
I mean, that alone
Yeah.
is so powerful.
Incredibly potent.
But then on top of that, you had that feeling of abandonment.
Right, like being forgotten.
Yeah, like you've been ignored by those in power.
Especially in those first few days when every second counts.
Yeah, when help is so desperately needed.
So all of that's bubbling under the surface.
Right.
And things escalate so badly that President Sánchez actually has to be escorted out
All right.
for his safety.
So the elected leader, the one representing the government's response, has to flee.
Yeah.
That really says something about the level of trust.
Or lack thereof.
Right.
Yeah, and how urgent the situation felt.
It's so interesting because that creates such a contrast
Mm-hmm.
with how the royal couple reacted.
Because while Sánchez is making a hasty exit,
Right.
King Felipe and Queen Letizia choose to stay.
Really?
They had security, of course,
Right.
but they stayed there and kept engaging with people.
Even with all the anger and hostility.
Even with all of that.
Wow. What do you think was behind that decision?
It makes you think, right?
Yeah.
What's the strategy there?
Why stay put when the president himself left?
I think this is where that whole symbolism of the monarchy comes into play,
Okay.
right? It's different from an elected official.
Yeah.
They represent this sense of continuity, a historical connection to the nation that goes beyond all the political stuff. So by staying, they're sending this message like,
Yeah.
we're in this with you.
Okay.
We're weathering the storm alongside our people,
Even when they're angry.
even when they're throwing things.
That's a powerful message.
And that message is even more powerful when you consider this one detail from the article.
Oh, okay with that.
Queen Letizia was brought to tears.
Oh, wow.
She's visibly moved
By
by the devastation
Yeah.
and hearing people's stories.
Now, given all the anger directed at them,
Right.
how do you think people saw that display of emotion?
It's a great question.
Right.
Some people might say it's calculated.
Like a way to get sympathy
Exactly.
and deflect criticism.
But whether it's genuine or not,
Yeah.
It adds this layer of vulnerability to the whole thing.
Like a shared sense of grief.
Yeah.
Which could resonate, especially coming from someone in her position.
So on one hand, you have the president fleeing for safety.
Right.
And on the other, the queen is brought to tears.
Okay.
It just creates such a complicated picture of leadership in the face of tragedy.
It really does.
And as if things weren't already complicated enough.
Oh, no.
The article goes on to say that all of the royal visits that day were canceled immediately.
Oh, wow.
Because of what happened.
So they stayed put,
Uh-huh.
but then they canceled everything else.
Meanwhile, Sánchez, now safe and sound, away from the angry crowds, calls those attacks marginal acts.
Marginal acts.
What do you make of that?
Is he downplaying what happened?
Or is there some truth to that? It's hard to say for sure.
I mean, it seems like he's trying to control how people see things.
Right.
You know, minimize any political damage.
Yeah.
But calling them marginal could also come across as dismissive.
Right, like he's ignoring the pain and anger that's driving all of this.
And I think the key thing to remember here is, even if it was just a small group of people involved in the attacks, what they did reflects a much bigger feeling.
Like widespread frustration.
Yeah, and disillusionment.
Something the government can't just ignore.
Exactly.
It's a tough spot for Sánchez, isn't it?
It really is.
Trying to acknowledge the public's anger, but also wanting to project this image of control.
Yeah, you gotta keep things steady.
Right, exactly. But there's this interesting twist the article brings up that really makes you think.
Okay.
So we're seeing all this anger and frustration directed at the government and even the monarchy.
Yeah.
But at the same time, the article talks about how thousands of regular Spaniards are just stepping up in a huge way to help each other out.
It's amazing to see, right?
That's incredible.
That resilience.
Yeah.
And compassion.
The article mentions people coming from all over Spain to volunteer.
Wow.
Helping with the cleanup, rebuilding, giving aid.
Basically doing what needs to be done.
Yeah.
Where maybe the official response is falling short.
So you have people taking things into their own hands, showing that sense of urgency and community.
Yeah.
That maybe they're not seeing from their leaders.
It's like they're saying, we'll take care of each other.
Right? What do you think that says about the Spanish people?
Well, I think it definitely complicates things.
Right?
Because, yeah, there's grief, anger, frustration, but there's also incredible resilience.
Yeah.
And this deep, deep well of compassion.
Yeah.
It reminds us that even in the worst times, people can be amazingly kind and come together to support each other.
And it makes you wonder, is this citizen response a sign of a bigger disconnect?
Oh, between
the people and the government?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, it raises questions about the role of the government, how effective the institutions are.
Right.
And, you know, just that fundamental relationship between those who govern and those who are governed.
Yeah.
It's interesting because you usually expect the government to take the lead in these situations.
Right. It's the traditional model. But here we're seeing people stepping up in such a big way that it almost overshadows the official response.
Yeah, it's like almost like two separate things are happening.
Right. It feels like we're seeing these two narratives side by side.
Okay.
On one hand, there's that anger and disillusionment with the leaders.
Yeah.
And then on the other, you have this amazing community and selflessness from the people.
Exactly. It's powerful.
It really is.
It's like this duality.
Yeah.
You see the best and worst of humanity at the same time during a crisis.
It makes you think about the long-term impact on Spain, right?
Right.
Will this be a turning point?
In how the people see their leaders.
Yeah. Or will it go back to how things were before?
That's the big question.
It really is.
And I think only time will tell.
Yeah.
But I think what's clear is this. The event has definitely revealed some vulnerabilities, some fault lines, but also incredible strengths within Spanish society.
It's like a moment of reckoning.
It is. And we'll probably feel the impact of this for a long time.
Yeah. It's a powerful thought, isn't it? How strength and fragility can both come out during a tragedy. And, you know, we've mostly focused on that initial response to the disaster.
Yeah.
But it's hard not to think about those longer-term effects.
Right, like those ripple effects.
Right, exactly. It's like a stress test for the whole society.
Right.
How do you think this event will shape Spain going forward?
It all comes down to how Spain learns and grows from this. You know, we saw that initial shock.
Yeah.
The anger. But will it lead to real change? Will they make changes to how they prepare for disasters?
Yeah.
Will people start to see the monarchy differently?
Ooh, interesting.
Will the government have to rethink how it responds to crises like this.
Yeah.
So many possibilities.
And we've talked about how citizens have been so supportive.
Yes.
Like they're really taking charge of the recovery effort.
Uh-huh.
Could that be a sign of what's to come? Like a more, I don't know, more proactive approach to solving problems?
It could be. It really makes you wonder, could this tragedy actually lead to a stronger Spain? One where people and communities are more ready to act and work together, not just during crises, but all the time.
That's a hopeful way to look at it.
It is.
Finding something positive in the middle of all this devastation.
Absolutely.
It's a reminder that even though we can't control everything that happens to us, we can control how we respond.
And the Spanish people have shown such incredible resilience.
They really have.
It's how they choose to use this experience that will really show their strength.
That's beautifully put. Well, this has been a really eye-opening look at this complex situation in Spain.
It really has.
We've seen anger, grief, resilience, and hope.
Wow.
And while we can only guess at what the long-term effects will be, one thing is for sure.
What's that?
This has left a mark on the nation.
Absolutely.
And for you, our listener, I'll leave you with this thought.
Yeah.
We've seen in Spain that a nation's true character comes out not during the disaster itself, but in how everyone responds afterward.
It's a powerful reminder that each of us plays a role in building stronger communities and demanding more from our leaders.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into such a pivotal moment in Spain's history.
It's been a pleasure.
Until next time, keep asking questions, keep exploring, and keep learning.